Welcome to The Chemical Show, the podcast where chemical means business. I'm your host, Victoria Meyer, bringing you stories and insights from leaders driving innovation and growth across the chemical industry. Each week, we explore key trends, real-world challenges, and the strategies that make an impact. Let's get started. Welcome back to The Chemical Show, where leaders talk business. Today, I am speaking with Ray Sambrotto, who is the CEO of Allied Microbiota. Ray has sought microbes and a better understanding of the roles they play in the environment around the world throughout his career. He has spent much of his career as a research professor in environmental microbiology at Columbia University, and he decided to venture into entrepreneurship and taking his insights on environmentalism and microbes and bioremediation and other good things that Ray's going to share with us into leading Allied Microbiota to help operationalize biotech for environmental problems. So we are going to be having a conversation about the role of biotech in environmental remediation, how it plays into the chemical industry, and more. Ray, welcome to The Chemical Show.
Thank you, Victoria. Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I am really glad to have you here. First of all, let's just start with you. Tell us a little bit about your origin story, what got you interested in this space, and then what led you to start AM?
I've always been a big fan of the environment and things that happen environmentally. And I was an uplander in upstate New York, but I always sought after the big blue ocean. So I eventually found myself getting an advanced degree in oceanography, and particularly microbiology, the bugs that live in the ocean. And I did that for a long time, and that was my academic expertise. Everyone has their little cellular area in academia, and that was mine. And so it was fit me. It was enjoyable. Academic research is great, really. And you get to follow the basic research. And in my case, doubly so because it got me outside and into the environment and on ships all over the global ocean. So that fit me just perfectly. But toward the over the last 10 years or so, I became more interested in the application of what we were learning and how to do that and make some of the things that we've learned and I've come up with over the years into commercial applications that could help alleviate some of the problems and challenges we have in the environment. So that was the genesis of Allied Microbiota.
So tell us a little bit about Allied Microbiota and your products and what you guys are doing.
It's essentially biotech for the environment. Now, most biotech is obviously biopharma, and with good reason. It provides drugs and services and things that we need. We can crib a lot of that technology into the environmental space, and a lot of the same technology that's used for biology and pharmaceutical applications can be repurposed for things in the environment. That's the general approach. And in particular, we're coming out of applications that have been fairly long-standing in the environmental space, particularly things like bioremediation, where you take strains of bacteria and apply them to the breakdown of contaminants in the environment. This has been a long-standing application for the last several decades. Now, it started off simply just using the bugs that were already in the soil and things, but now we've progressed to the point where we can take very specific strains that are shown to be more efficient at breaking down certain contaminants and then use them in a selective manner, bringing more capable bugs to bear on the problem, as it were.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, and in fact, as you talk about microbiotics and just how we've used that for remediation, I mean, that's the fundamentals of like wastewater treatment, right? Is using biology and microbes and what have you to clean up water. And obviously we're using it a lot to clean up the soil. I know one of the topics we started talking about earlier, Ray, was around PFAS. And obviously we know that we've got a PFAS issue. I'll just call it an issue and concern. And it sounds like you guys have figured out a way to use your microbes from Allied Microbiota to address PFAS contamination.
Yes. So bioremediation has dealt with all of the standard contaminants in the past, things like petroleum, which is pretty much everywhere, and then the more difficult or recalcitrant contaminants, the halogenated things, chlorinated biphenyls and things like that. So, and we made our mark with developing strains that could handle the really recalcitrant things like polychlorinated biphenyls, PCBs, and things like that. And you would think that at this point it would just be a historical problem about cleaning up some of the residues from the prior century. But unfortunately, there's a category called the emerging contaminants, which continue to evolve or continue to emerge in the industrial space that are of some concern. And the chief one that you just mentioned is PFAS, per and polyfluoroalkyl substances. So these fluorocarbons that have proven very useful in a variety of things, everything from nonstick cookware to firefighting foams, but have been extraordinarily difficult to break down.
Yeah.
So people are very interested in more solutions in that.
So I guess how does this really work? So I think about microbiology and I think about the bugs and things are we're using a lot of microbes and other things around the industry and really around all of us just to do different things. How does this actually work and what's unique maybe about the technology that you guys are bringing to the market?
Well, we call it Bioremediation 2.0. So really using the tools that we've got over the last quarter century, the newer bio tools to bring to bear on these environmental problems. I mean, it was only about 20 years ago we learned how to actually identify most of the organisms in the environment. We graduated from just culture dependent techniques to the genetic techniques that we use now. So we can get a pretty good idea of what's there. And
Yeah.
then that helps us to select taxons that really would be most useful to us. So we have the literature now growing year by year in terms of people reporting on various applications of the different bacteria. And we have the tool set building up that we can use.
Yeah. So, I'm trying to wrap my head a little bit around and I know you guys are in the midst of commercializing this. What does that look like? How do you produce these microbes? How do you tailor it to the right solutions? Are these big batches, small quantities? I mean, I'm assuming you guys have gone beyond the lab, but how do you go from lab to environment,
Yeah,
and really make that impact, right?
that's the critical thing, the scale up, which is
Yeah.
the big kahuna in many of these technologies, and that's certainly the case in ours as well. Certainly no problem at the benchtop. We have very good methods for growing bacteria and characterizing their various capabilities with relation to different contaminants. So that's comes out of the benchtop, and we can do that quite well. But as you say, the challenge comes when you have to go to the environmental scale. It's not benchtop that matters anymore. It's tens of thousands of gallons of wastewater that are being produced every day by a certain industry. It's hundreds or perhaps thousands of tons of soil that's been contaminated by a certain chemical. So that's the challenge. And so we've been doing pilot work with a variety of cooperative industries, one of which has been a soil remediation company. And they brought in soil. We worked at their facility in outside of Newark, Delaware, and they would bring in the soil and we would mix it with our strains of bacteria, and it was mostly petroleum contaminated soil. So we cut our teeth on these kinds of case studies where we were able to work with large volumes of soil and do a time series of the effect of treating them with our bacteria. So we have, we have some good documentation of how fast things like that are and how much better it is than other methods. So the selling point for the biology has been its low cost, but a big drawback has been the time. The biological breakdown rates are usually very slow, and people want to get the soil out and get something built, and they don't have time to wait for a long time. So
Yeah.
with the newer applications that we're developing, we've been able to speed up that decontamination process by order of magnitude. So going from years to weeks in terms of
Really?
cleaning up the soil. So yeah.
So that's huge. In fact, that's probably maybe one of the winning value propositions is just being able to speed that up because we know, I mean, as you say, nobody actually likes to wait
Yeah.
to get results. We want our results instantly. And so time to execute, time to delivery becomes really critical.
And the incumbent technology there that's always won that battle has been landfills. Cut it and drag it to a landfill. We've been able to equalize the rates there because the tipping fees in landfills, particularly for the highly contaminated soils
Yeah.
and materials, has gone up dramatically and will probably continue to do so as
What does
landfills.
that mean? What are tipping fees?
When you bring a truck to a
Ah,
landfill and they say, okay, your truck, you have got 10 tons of material that's going to cost you this much
got it.
to dump it, and that tipping fee is dependent on the class of material. So for Class C landfills, which are very restrictive,
Yeah.
highly hazardous material, the tipping fees have gone up drastically.
Yeah, that makes
So
sense.
yeah.
What about the whole regulatory aspect of this? Because I know, I've worked with and talked with a lot of leaders that are in startups that are bringing new products to market. And one of the biggest challenges, of course, is getting regulatory approvals. How are you guys tackling and approaching that?
Yeah, good question. Because obviously the environmental engineering is a highly regulated area. And we got around it in the soil remediation work we did because we were working at an existing facility. So they had all of the permits.
Yeah,
So yeah, but the permitting is an important part of this, particularly working in the environment. So all of these activities have to be permitted, and yeah, so we've been working with companies that have handled the permitting for us. We do not intend to be a contractor ourselves. We are a
yeah.
specialty company that is developing specific tools for these larger environmental engineering companies.
Got it. And so you'll be partnering with them to bring your product to market
Yes,
and the
yes.
solutions to market. That's great. We talk about just kind of how Allied Microbiota fits into the broader chemical space and just environmental space. How do you see this transforming? Where does it fit in as we look at the products that you're bringing to market, the technologies you're bringing to market, and looking forward over the next 5 to 10 years? Where do you see this fit, and how do we bring you guys in to the mix?
Well, lowering the costs for existing procedures like decontaminating soils and sediments. I think we can provide a more cost-effective alternative to what's going on right now. So based on the case studies we've already developed. And then in the new and emerging problems, such as the PFAS we mentioned earlier, we found that they really are not the forever chemicals that they were claimed to be. And a lot of that's been repeated quite often in the press, but they're actually amenable to breakdown, almost certainly at much lower rates than other things because the fluorocarbon bonds are so difficult to break. The fluorocarbon bonds have been something that have been almost excluded from biochemistry. And so there are very few biochemical pathways that can be used to break them down. But we found that we can get breakdown of some of the common PFAS, particularly some of the regulated PFAS, PFAS and PFOA, and we can either change them chemically into less toxic forms or at least break down the carbon-carbon bond to break them into smaller compounds, which are less toxic.
So I came back that starts to address one of my questions, which is what does this stuff turn into, right? So you're remediating it in the soil, and going. Let's use PFAS as the example. From PFAS to what? How does that work?
Yeah, well, we've been doing our homework there with a lot of LC mass spec work to actually look what happens when you do that. Not only how much of the product disappears, but what are the breakdown products? Because you have to worry about forming something that's also toxic in the breakdown pool. So we've been looking at that, and it's heavy sledding. It's a lot of analytical work, but we've identified and been able to mass balance a lot of the work we've done in terms of breaking how much goes into the various breakdown
Yeah.
pools.
What role does AI play in any of this, Ray? So, I've talked with a lot of different companies, especially that are bringing AI solutions to, let's just say, product formulations or figuring out some of this deep scientific work to get from concept to reality. How are you guys using digital and AI in the development of your products?
We've been using machine learning approaches and mainly for prospecting for capabilities in the bacteria. Obviously, there's millions and millions of different bacteria. So where would you go looking? We call it bioprospecting for new
Yeah.
things. And we've been using machine learning to help us with that, mostly from the genetics and bioinformatics end of things.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that's probably the right place to start, right? Is letting it shortcut some of that work
Yeah.
that you would otherwise have to do.
But I think we're certainly just at the tip of the iceberg with that. I think there'll be a lot more we can do.
Yeah. So, we've talked a bit about your products. We've talked about what the solution is. Where do you guys fit in the industrial value chain? I think that's always this concept. And, I think about here on the chemical show, and we talk with leaders across the value chain. Where are you fitting into the value chain?
Yeah, so the idea is to go beyond the bioremediation, and bioremediation's been an afterthought. I mean, we've made a mess and now we have to go clean it up.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so hopefully we'll clean it all up. At that point, we can focus where we should be focused, which is internalizing the remediation process within the walls of the industry so that you're really having no impact now. So there won't be any future messes to clean up because we'll handle it inside the process itself. And so we're getting into that. I'd say the wastewater, industrial wastewater pretreatment is already a fairly mature engineering area, and where people are recognizing that they're going to build these solutions directly into their process. It's not going to be an afterthought. They're going
Yeah.
to treat the material inside the building. And so
It's,
yeah,
so that's interesting. I mean, that's absolutely true in the production process of chemicals, right? Um,
yes,
when I think about PFAS, the PFAS issue is not a production issue, it's a usage issue because obviously it's been used like in firefighting foams, for instance, where it was the wonder chemical for a while, right? And inside the four walls of the manufacturing plant, presumably some of that was done, but it's getting out into the broader world. So I guess it's kind of a combination that you treat it on the front end during the manufacturing process and that you're ready to treat it on the back end in the after use process.
yes, yes. And so there's, the fulfilling the regulatory responsibilities is one thing. And particularly as the regulatory limits become lower and lower, then it becomes a bigger and bigger marketplace.
Yeah.
So, and trying to keep the costs low and trying to do it as cost effectively as we can. And that brings us to another area, which is not just removing the contaminant, but turning the contaminant into another commercially valuable product. Now that's been done in a lot of areas. I mean, biogas has been made from agricultural feedlots and things for quite some time. So certainly not the first ones to think of turning waste products into a commodity. So, but you can help still more with some of these industrial processes. You can, if we can get a cost-effective way to treat the waste and then defer some of the cost by producing a product, then you've got, you've made it more cost effective still.
Yeah. I mean, across the industry, this is what happens, right? So we keep repurposing waste streams and figuring out
Yeah,
how to create something good with it that people
yeah,
want and companies and businesses want and need to use, et cetera. And so that's always, I guess, is part of the continual life cycle of the value chain.
yeah. I mean, that's how biology, that's how ecology works. That's how the world works that I spent many years in. And we need to apply some of this, maybe perhaps in something called industrial ecology of, finding closed loops for some of these substances.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. So you've been at this for a while. When did you guys really get started on Allied Microbiota? And then what's next for you? Where are you guys going next?
Well, been doing this for quite some time now, probably about 15 years if you count the years in the university. But then stepped out of the university with some IP from the university, and in earnest doing it probably since about 2020.
Okay,
Yeah.
so 5 years in. Um,
Yes.
and I know from talking to a lot of founders, there is no such thing as overnight success, right?
Yeah.
It's a journey. It's a journey. What are you looking to do? What's your goals? What do we see? What should we be looking for from Allied Microbiota over the next 18 to 24 months?
We're starting to get some traction in a couple of areas. Yeah, so soil is a big one, and it's a huge market, and so even a small percentage of that is
Yeah,
a big cash flow. So and then the wastewater treatment, both in the industrial side and the municipal side too.
yeah,
We have solutions not just in the contaminant world, but also in the domestic sewage world, of
yeah.
doing some of the nitrogen and nutrient removal a little bit more effectively than it's been done.
Yeah, makes sense. And
Yeah.
and you guys are working on partners to help take your technology to keep developing it and take it to market.
Yes, yeah, in parallel, because again, we're not the main contractor. We're going to be working with larger companies and established engineering companies
Yeah.
to help them provide more bang for their clients' buck when on the various things that
Yeah.
they are charged with.
Yeah. So Ray, as you started this, I always like to talk leadership with my guests because, it's a journey. So this has been a big journey for you. What's maybe been the biggest surprise as you've moved out of academia, taking the work that you've done, obviously with the environment, with companies, and I know that you've done a lot of research partnerships with people, and then actually taking it into an enterprise to scale up and commercialize it. What's been the biggest surprises for you?
Wow, I don't know where to start with that. I guess wouldn't call it surprises so much as I knew there'd be issues, but how really challenging it is. There's in the academic world, you have ideas, people get excited about them. You can start to do a seminar series and put together a publication and things, and there you go. That's the product. In the industrial world, of course, it's a good idea is great, but you still have to get people to buy off on that. And there's good reasons not to change the way you're doing something if it's working. There's the if it ain't broke, don't fix it attitude toward new technology. And in the world of remediation, since it's not typically the key part of the industrial process for most companies, it's kind of an afterthought. So convincing people that these kinds of approaches not just cost effective, but are going to lead to a better simplified process for them. It's a process, it's a road, and
Yeah.
it's not a simple one.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. So what else do you want people to know about what you're doing and what Allied is doing?
We're getting better as the tools get better, and as particularly as I think it will, the regulations continue to increase the market. We're here, and I think you'll see a lot more of these kinds of solutions, biologically based solutions. They're not the only one in town. Certainly, there's chemistry and physics and other things that happen, but biology is certainly ready, and it's been underutilized in the past. And I think you'll see it come on quite strong in the next 5 or 10 years.
Awesome. I think so as well. Well, Ray, thank you so much for joining me today and sharing your story and the story about Allied Microbiota.
Thank you, Victoria. Good speaking with you.
Yeah, and thank you everyone for joining us today. Keep listening, keep following, keep sharing, and we will talk with you again soon. Thanks for joining us today on The Chemical Show. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and most importantly, share it with your friends and colleagues. For more insights, visit thechemicalshow.com and connect with us on LinkedIn. You can find me at Victoria King Meyer on LinkedIn, and you can also find us at the Chemical Show podcast. Join us next time for more conversations and strategies shaping the future of the industry. We'll see you soon.